Welcome to Language Swap, everyone, a fun way to learn English. We are so excited to have you join us today.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sally. And Alex, I want to ask you something before we start today.
Sure, go ahead. I'm curious what you're thinking about.
Have you ever had to walk into a room or get on a call feeling completely unsure of yourself, but you had to act like you had it all together?
Oh, constantly. Actually, there was this one job interview a few years ago where I was shaking on the inside the entire time. But somehow the interviewer told me afterward that I seemed really composed and confident. I remember walking out thinking if only she knew how nervous I actually was in there.
That is exactly what today's episode is about. Because confidence in English, at least the way people express it out loud, is often more about language than it is about actually feeling calm inside.
Today we are talking about sounding confident even when you're not, how to speak with authority, how to recover gracefully when you stumble, and how to project calm even during moments when your stomach is doing complete flips underneath the surface.
This is such an important skill, because confidence is not the absence of nerves. It is knowing how to talk and carry yourself despite the nerves being there the whole time underneath everything you say.
Let's get right into it, starting with how to open a conversation or a presentation in a way that immediately sounds confident, even in the very first few seconds.
The first thing to know is that confident speech is almost always slower and more deliberate than nervous speech. Nervous English tends to rush, to add extra words, to trail off mid-sentence. Confident English takes its time and does not apologize for that.
One of the best phrases for starting strong is, "Let me walk you through." Instead of jumping straight into details in a scattered way, you say, "Let me walk you through what I found," or "Let me walk you through the plan." It immediately signals structure and control before you've even shared a single detail.
I love that phrase because it does two things at once. It tells the listener what's coming, and it makes you sound like you have a clear plan, even if you're building it as you go in real time.
Exactly, and to give you some context first, this buys you a moment to organize your thoughts while sounding intentional rather than nervous. To give you some context first, here's how we got to this point. Very smooth, very in control, and genuinely useful when your thoughts are still forming.
Here's where I'm coming from. Similar idea. It frames your perspective clearly before diving into details, and it sounds thoughtful rather than rushed or unsure of yourself.
Now here's something really important, filler words. Everyone uses them, even confident native speakers, even people who do public speaking for a living. But there's a real difference between filler words that sound nervous and filler words that sound composed and intentional.
Nervous filler tends to be quick and repeated. Things like or like stacked close together with almost no breathing room. Confident filler is slower and more spaced out. Things like so, a pause, and then your point delivered clearly.
So, on its own, followed by a breath, is such an underrated tool. It gives you a second to think, and it sounds intentional rather than panicked. Try saying so with a pause versus rushing straight into your next sentence without any break at all. Completely different energy, and the words haven't even changed.
That small pause is doing so much work. It's the difference between sounding like you're scrambling for words and sounding like you're simply taking a moment to choose your words carefully and deliberately.
I actually practiced this once before a big presentation. I recorded myself talking and noticed I said almost every 3 seconds. So I tried replacing every single with a silent pause instead, and it completely transformed how I sounded, even though I was just as nervous inside.
That is such a great practical example. The nerves didn't disappear at all, but the sound of your speech changed completely, which is really the whole point of everything we're talking about today.
Now, what about when you actually make a mistake while speaking? Because that happens to everyone, confident or not, native speaker or not, no matter how much experience you have.
The phrase, "let me rephrase that," is incredibly powerful. Instead of stopping in panic or apologizing excessively, you simply say, "let me rephrase that," and continue. As if it were a completely normal part of speaking, because honestly, it genuinely is.
I want to share a story about this because it changed how I think about mistakes completely. I was giving a talk once and I said a completely wrong number, like a really wrong one, way off from what I meant to say. And instead of freezing, I just said, sorry, let me rephrase that number and corrected it and moved on smoothly.
And what actually happened afterward, once you moved past that moment?
Someone actually came up to me afterward and told me they didn't even remember the mistake. They just remembered how smoothly I handled it in the moment. That really stuck with me.
That's such a great example of how the recovery matters more than the mistake itself. Nobody really remembers the stumble. They remember whether you handled it with grace or with visible panic.
Exactly. And what I meant to say was, works the same way. It reframes an error as a simple clarification rather than a failure. What I meant to say was the numbers increased, not decreased, clean, quick, absolutely no drama attached to it.
Let me back up for a second. This is great when you realize you skipped something or need to add context you missed earlier. Let me back up for a second and explain how we got here. It sounds organized and thorough, not confused or lost.
Now, a really useful category, how to buy yourself thinking time without sounding unsure of what you're saying. Because sometimes you genuinely need a second to gather your thoughts before responding.
That's a great question. Let me think about that for a second. This phrase is gold. It complements the question, buys you real time, and sounds thoughtful rather than caught completely off guard.
Give me one moment to think that through. Very similar energy, it's direct about needing time, but frames it as thoroughness rather than hesitation. People respect this much more than awkward silence or rushed, unclear answers that trail off.
There are a few ways to look at this. This buys time while also making you sound like you're considering multiple angles thoughtfully. Which, by the way, you actually are, because you're literally thinking as you speak this exact phrase.
I really like using this one specifically before answering a hard or unexpected question because it reframes the pause as genuine analysis rather than uncertainty or being caught unprepared.
Now, let's talk about body language paired with language, because confident-sounding English is not just about the words themselves. It's also about how you use pauses and pacing throughout everything you say.
One huge tip, stop apologizing before you even start talking. So many people open with sorry, this might be a dumb question, or sorry if this doesn't make sense. That undermines you before you've even said anything at all.
Instead, you can simply ask your question directly. Or if you want a softer opener, try quick question, or just to clarify. These sound confident and considerate without minimizing yourself before you've even spoken a single word.
Quick question is so useful because it's neutral, it doesn't apologize, it doesn't over-explain, it just signals what's coming in a clean, simple way that respects everyone's time, including your own.
Now I hear what you're saying, and is an incredibly powerful phrase for disagreeing confidently without sounding aggressive or dismissive toward the other person. I hear what you're saying, and I actually see it a little differently. It validates the other person while still asserting your own view clearly.
That phrase does so much work in professional settings especially. It shows respect and confidence at the same time, which is honestly a hard balance to strike in any language, not just English.
I'd push back on that a little. Direct, but respectful way to disagree with someone. It doesn't attack the person, it engages with the idea itself. Very useful in meetings, discussions, or debates where you want to sound confident but not combative or harsh.
I used this phrase in a meeting last month, actually, and I noticed something interesting. Saying I'd push back on that a little made the whole room feel more comfortable disagreeing too. It set a tone of respectful debate instead of everyone just agreeing to avoid conflict.
That's such a great observation. Confident language doesn't just help you individually, it actually shapes the whole tone of a conversation or a room.
Now let's talk about closing statements, because how you end something matters just as much as how you start it, maybe even more.
So, to sum up, or so bottom line, these signal that you're bringing things to a clear, confident close rather than trailing off awkwardly without a clear ending. So, bottom line, I think we should move forward with option 2.
Bottom line is such a strong phrase. It sounds decisive, like you've done the thinking already and you're delivering a clear conclusion. Not just rambling toward an unclear stop that leaves everyone unsure if you're actually finished.
And finally, happy to answer any questions instead of just trailing off silently at the end of what you're saying. It invites engagement confidently, rather than leaving an awkward silence where you're just hoping someone says something to fill the gap.
One more thing I want to add here. Posture and breath actually change your voice, even on a podcast or a phone call where nobody can see you at all. Sitting up straight and breathing deeply before speaking genuinely changes how confident you sound, not just how confident you feel internally.
That's such an underrated tip. People assume confidence is only about the words themselves, but your body genuinely affects your voice, your pacing, and your tone, even when you're completely invisible on a call or a recording.
Completely agree with that. And one final phrase, "I've got this," said quietly to yourself right before you speak, not out loud to others, just internally in your own head. It's such a simple mental reset that changes your whole delivery in ways that are hard to explain but easy to feel.
I want to add one more idea here before we move to the word tour. Confidence is also about accepting that you don't have to sound perfect. You just have to sound steady. Those are two very different things, and steady is actually achievable every single time.
That's such an important distinction. Perfect is not the goal here at all. Steady and composed, even while imperfect, is what actually reads as confidence to other people listening.
I also want to touch on something people don't talk about enough: confidence in writing, not just speaking. Because a lot of us communicate through messages and emails just as much as we do out loud, and the same principles actually apply there too.
That's such a good point. What does confident writing look like compared to nervous writing?
Nervous writing tends to over-explain and over-apologize. Things like, "Sorry to bother you, I know you're probably busy, but I was just wondering if maybe you could possibly help with something small." Confident writing gets to the point respectfully. "Hi, could you help me with this when you get a chance?"
I definitely used to write those long, apologetic messages. I would reread an email 5 times before sending it, adding more cushioning language every single time out of nervousness.
A lot of people do exactly that, and the fix is similar to what we talked about with speaking. Trust that a direct, warm sentence is enough. You don't need 3 apologies wrapped around a simple request.
Just checking in is such a great confident phrase for messages too. Instead of a long explanation about why you're following up, you simply write "just checking in on this." And it sounds completely normal and appropriately assertive.
And let me know if you have any questions instead of a nervous, long closing paragraph. It's warm, it's open, and it ends the message on a confident note rather than trailing off uncertainly.
These all connect to the same core idea we've been circling around this whole episode. Confidence is often just choosing fewer, clearer words instead of more anxious, cushioned ones.
All right, let's do our word tour for today, covering everything we talked about.
Let me walk you through. Signals, structure, and control right from the start of anything you're explaining. To give you some context first, buys time while sounding intentional and organized. Here's where I'm coming from. Frames your perspective clearly and thoughtfully before details.
So, followed by a pause. An underrated tool for thinking time that sounds composed instead of panicked or rushed. Let me rephrase that. Recovers from a mistake smoothly, like it's a normal part of speaking because it truly is.
What I meant to say was, reframes an error as clarification rather than failure. Let me back up for a second. Adds missing context without sounding confused or lost in your own explanation.
That's a great question. Let me think about that. Buys real thinking time while complementing the question at the same time. There are a few ways to look at this. Frames a pause as analysis, not uncertainty or being unprepared.
Quick question or just to clarify. Confident openers that don't apologize or minimize yourself before speaking. I hear what you're saying and disagrees confidently while still validating the other person's perspective.
I'd push back on that a little direct but respectful disagreement that engages the idea, not the person. So, bottom line, a strong, decisive way to close your point clearly and confidently.
Happy to answer any questions. Confidently invites engagement instead of trailing off into silence. And "I've got this," said quietly to yourself right before speaking, as a simple and effective mental reset.
And for writing specifically, just checking in instead of a long, anxious explanation before a follow-up. Let me know if you have any questions as a clean, confident close to any message or email you send.
Your challenge this week: pick one situation where you usually feel nervous speaking English and try using at least 2 of today's phrases in that exact moment. Notice how just having the words ready changes how you show up, even if the nerves are still there underneath.
Confidence really is a language skill just as much as it's a mindset. And now you have real, practical tools to practice both of those together, side by side.
If this episode gave you something useful today, sharing it with someone who needs a little extra confidence boost would genuinely mean a lot to us. And following the show helps these episodes reach more people who need exactly this kind of practical vocabulary.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Go out there and sound confident, even on the days it's genuinely hard to feel that way inside.
See you in the next episode.